What's up guys, it's Z here. Welcome back to Yugioh Deck of the Day. Today we're doing a Nekroz update after such a long time. I think that we haven't done an update on this deck for quite some time. But now Ghost from the Past is very close, and we got the new card that Nekroz actually has been wanting for quite some time, because Nekroz didn't have a really good interruption on anything unrelated to the extra deck, but now it has a generic negation that it needed so desperately. And Nekroz, the last time it got direct support was I think back in Maximum Crisis, and that card was Ariel, so it's not like it was the most impactful card, nobody was playing it. But now we have some new card, and we've been using the new engines in the deck for quite a long time now. It can use some of the most powerful engines in the deck. The recent ban list, well, some people think that it might have hit the Nekroz deck because it's a ritual deck, but not really, because you don't really play more than one Benton anyway, so it got unscathed very well from that list. So the deck is more powerful than ever before now. In the format that now we've seen, what pretty much is the most playable deck is Dragon Link, so we know exactly how to counter it. And I think Nekroz is one of the best decks if you want to play against Dragon Link, because Dragon Link is so reliant on the extra deck, so just summoning a Unicorn on the field sometimes can completely destroy them if they're not able to use cards like Romulus, Striker, Dragon, LP, and Pisty. So this is why, if you want to play some of an anti-meta deck for the format and you're a fan of Nekroz, then I think this is a time for you to play the deck. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So to start off with the Nekroz monsters, we play of course 3 copies of Nekroz of Brionac. You have to play 3, it searches any of your monsters, pretty standard. It can bounce 2 bounces from the extra deck once it's on the field. That can sometimes happen because you can use Cycle to bring it back from the grave after you discard it for its effect. Yes, this is a really good going second play. It's a very disruptive play and your opponent will have to deal with it, otherwise they're going to lose their entire board. 3 copies of Nekroz of Colossus. Back in the day, people were playing 2, and I think before Drytron was released, people were still playing 2, and that was correct, but now you don't really mind drawing multiples because you can always tribute the extra ones for the Drytrons, because now you want to see a ritual spell as fast as possible if you want to make an impact. And this is why maxing out on Colossus is actually the correct move, because drawing multiples, either you can get them on the field even if you don't have Cycle, or you can actually tribute them for Drytron so you can get an extra effects. So you don't care if you have 2 main ritual monsters in your hand, as long as you can get access to a Drytron monster, you can get access to pretty much whatever you want. 3 copies of Nekroz of Unicorn. This card being at 3 is so important for the deck, because not because of its effect to negate extra deck monster effects. This was really good at 1 as well if you want to use for a lock, but for the effect to recycle back Nekroz monsters, because this deck has an insane grind game. The ritual spells all cycle to another one once your opponent has cleared your board. This card gets back cards from the grave, Cycle gets you back monsters from the grave, Meteonis with the Drytron ritual spell can get you back ritual monsters from the grave as well. So it's not like you ever run out of resource with the deck, because as long as you have a ritual spell left or some monsters left to back Meteonis, then you can basically get whatever you want from the grave. For the one-offs, here is the new ritual monster Nekroz of Eriader. This card is insane. So basically what you care about this card is that if it's on the field, if a monster effect is activated, you can tribute a monster from your hand or your field to negate the activation, and you banish that card. The rest of the text is pretty much irrelevant, you don't care about anything else, but the cool thing is that Nekroz finally has a generic interruption. Before we only had to rely on stuff like Clauselus and Unicorn for interruption, which they're only interrupt the extra deck. You don't really care about anything else than the extra deck. So if you're playing against stuff like Eldritch, you didn't have anything, and your opponent might as well use a Golden Lord on one of your cards and completely ruin your day, because if you're relying on Vanity's Ruler, so your opponent could very easily get rid of it with just one Eldritch effect. But now you have something to negate some monster effects, and this card with Drytron Meteonis is so easy to summon. If it was just for Nekroz, then it might have been a little bit difficult to summon, but Drytron make it so easy to bring out this card. So it's a monster that the deck desperately needs. It's an extra body on the field that helps you get for a game even faster, because it's a 3300 attacker, so you try to get access to it as fast as possible. And the play you want to go for turn 1 is most likely going for Vanity's Ruler and going for this on the field. I'm also playing another engine that complements everything else, because the deck doesn't really care about summoning mouse from the extra deck, so you can see where this is going. I'm going to show you a little bit later. So the deck has pretty much everything it needs to win going first, and it was always a good going second deck inherently, so it's a deck that can do pretty much anything. The rest of the one-offs are 1 copy of Trishula, of course. Mainly you use Trishula to pretty much try to stop your Unicorn from getting impermed or something, so you can keep the lockout, but it's not that rare that you will summon it on the field, but just not as often as it used to. And 1 copy of Valkyrus, just in case you want to survive a turn. And with the Drytron monsters, if you don't want to overlay them or link them, you can just tribute them to get some new cards, so Valkyrus is a good card to summon in some scenarios. I play 1 copy of Shurit. You need to play 1 copy of Shurit whenever you're playing Nekroz, no matter what build you're playing, because it's such a powerful card that you can search whenever you want and gives you another follow-up by tributing it to get a search for either a Bree or a Clauselus, depending on what you have. so you need to play one no matter what kind of build you're playing. For the Drytron monsters, play of course 3 copies of Drytron Alpha and 3 copies of Drytron Zeta. If you're playing a mini Drytron engine and you're not playing pure Drytrons, I think these two should be the only ones you're playing. And in Nekroz, you don't really care about anything else. You can try the one that cycles a card if you think that you're getting access to both of them very fast, but the deck doesn't have enough space to place stuff like the field spell, so it's not like I will get access to both of them very, very early, like when I say I'm playing a Cyber Angel deck, where you try to get more Drytrons because you need Drytrons to play, but Nekroz don't really need Drytrons to play, they're just an extra plus. They replace the incantations because they're much more powerful than incantations, because you can do stuff from the extra deck with them. And Zeus is a card that exists that makes Drytrons even more insane, because Assembled Nightingale is a card, so you can attack directly and go into Zeus, so it gives you a really good going second play, and they give you Tribute Fodder for Vanity's Ruler. 1 copy of Ben 10 with 1 copy of Vanity's Ruler. Like I said before, the ban list did not affect this deck at all. You are never playing more than 1 copy of Ben 10 in this deck. You just want to search her with one of your preparations, or maybe when you send your Herald of the Arclight to the grave with your Kaleidoscope, you just send her to the, you just search her, and then you tribute her for with a cycle, and now you can tribute her with Drytrons as well, so it's even more consistent than before. You search your ruler, you don't really normal summon anything other than your Vanity's Ruler in the deck, so you tribute your 2 Drytrons or any 2 monsters, you summon this, and this is basically a game against most decks if you don't have an out. So it's just that simple. If you want to play more normal summons, you can. If you want to play stuff like Manju or Gale Dogra, you can play them. Diviner of the Herald is a card that's coming out really, really soon in Lightning Overdrive, so this is going to be a really good card to experiment with for a ritual deck, especially one like Nekroz, where you can use her level 6 when you send the Herald, she becomes level 6, so you can tribute for a Brio to get her second effect as well. You can do stuff like that as well. But still, you can experiment with the deck. The deck is not really set in stone. It's a very flexible deck. You can do whatever you want with it. You just need to be very wary of how you want to do things and have a goal in mind when you build your deck. I do play a Dogmatika package, play just 1 copy of Ecclesia and 1 copy of Fleur de Lis. Of course, with 3 Nadirs, this combo just becomes insane, because you don't care about the extra deck. Even if you use a punishment, you don't care about summoning anything from the extra deck for the following turn. You don't need Zeus to win, you just have it as an extra step in order to make some more use of your extra deck, because you don't really do anything other than dumping monsters from the grave with Kaleidoscope and punishment. So just playing these are really, really good. They contradict with the Drytrons a little bit, Ecclesia does, but still, sometimes you can just use the Nadir Servant to search pretty much a punishment, so you can get that during the end phase, have some follow-up. You don't really need to use Ecclesia, and sometimes you can't get access to Vanity's Ruler. Some hands may be weird, or maybe your opponent interrupted you, so this is another time that Ecclesia is going to be good, so you can get both Fleur de Lis and punishment. For the spells, let's start with the ritual spells. Play, of course, 2 copies of Kaleidoscope. It's the only one that the Nekroz ritual spells, actually you need to play more than 1, because it's a card that really, really goes for the grind games. Sending Herald is usually the early game play, but sending NTSS during the late game is so important, because not only do you get a unicorn on the field, but you also pop a card. So you need to play more than 1, in my opinion. If you play only 1, sometimes the grind game can be a little bit problematic, especially if you have something from your hand that you need to get access to, because if you summon something with Meteonis, you're not going to get an extra value, but Kaleidoscope gives you a search or a pop, so this is why I think it's such a good card. 1 copy of Cycle, usually you use this to tribute your Benton to bring back a Brio from the grave, so you can search for your Vanity's Ruler. And 1 copy of Mirror. Mirror is such a good card now, because not only can you summon Trishula with it by banishing a Brionac and a Colossus, but you can summon your area there by banishing a Unicorn and a Brionac, so you have an even more powerful monster you can summon with this card. 1 copy of Meteonis Drytron. This card is insane because it gives you access to pretty much whatever you need without trying to pretty much tribute everything you have. Unless you actually don't have anything else to tribute Vanity's Ruler, this is the card you're going to be using to get back your area there pretty much every single turn, so you can have more interruption on the field. And you can recycle this card as many times as you want, so as long as it doesn't get Crowed or anything, you're good to go. 3 copies of Drytron Nova to add some more consistency to the Drytron package. I do not play the field spell because I don't have space. If you don't have access to the Dogmatikas, let's say, because I know there's not budget, then of course you can play the field spell instead to get the deck more consistent. You can play whatever you want if you want to make the deck better. It's up to you what you want to play. 3 copies of Preparation. Of course, you have to max it out, searching your Brio, searching your Unicorn, searching even your Benton sometimes. Sometimes you don't have the tools to search your Benton and tribute her without searching her directly with Preparation, so this is why this card is so good, and it gives you access to a ritual spell from the grave as well. 3 copies of the Nadir Servant. You need to play 3 of this because it's the best card to open with. If you get this, you can get access to both Punishment and Fleur de Lis, because if you open just Ecclesia, you're only to get 1 of them. So as long as this card is at 3, we're going to play 3 of this and 1 Ecclesia. If it goes to 1 sometime in the future, which is very possible, then the engine is going to switch from playing 3 Nadir and 1 Ecclesia to playing 1 Nadir and 3 Ecclesia, and it just won't be that powerful, but it's still going to be a really good engine to run. 1 copy of Foolish Burial for any of the Drytrons. Sometimes you can send your Shurit as well if you want to tribute it. 1 copy of Rhoda, searching your Colossus Ozolas or you shoot it, and 1 copy of Punishment for the Dogmatika package. For the extra deck, play 2 copies of Herald of the Arclight. Sometimes even going for the late game surge with this card is very important because Kaleidoscope, like I said, I play 2 of, so you can send either 2 Heralds or 2 NTSS or 1 and 1. You can do whatever the scenario asks for, and sometimes you can even send this with Punishment, which won't happen too often, but still it can destroy a small monster and then get a surge as well. 2 copies of NTSS, of course. If you're playing a Dogmatika engine, you need to be playing at least 1 of this. 1 copy of Wind Pegasus Ignister. I like playing this card whenever I play the Dogmatika package because some scenarios don't really require you to pop 2 monsters right away. Maybe your opponent is playing a deck like, maybe let's say you're playing against Dragon Link. If you want to pop their normal summons, if you send an NTSS with your Punishment, you're not getting any value out of it because there are not 2 cards on the field for you to pop. So if you just want to pop the first card your opponent sends on the field, then Pegasus is the best monster to send because then you can have your opponent play around it, because if it's in the graveyard, if one of your cards is destroyed, then you can banish it to spin a card from the field back into the deck, so your opponent has to play around it, or if they don't know what this card does and they don't read it, then you can catch them off guard when they try to destroy your monsters. So this is why having this card with Dogmatika, I think, is very, very crucial, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't tried it out, play it, and you're going to see just how powerful it is. 1 Star Reader and 1 Shooting Quasar. If you're playing Nekroz, the extra deck doesn't really matter too much, and having these 2 monsters, a level 11 monster and a level 12 monster, is very important for Kaleidoscope in order to summon your Trishul and your Valkyries with something else. 1 copy of Assembled Nightingale with 1 copy of Zeus. The Drytrons give you access to this package, and this is a very, very good going second combo. Sometimes without even doing anything else, before you even ritual summon anything, you can force your opponent to bait out negates or just destroy their entire board if they don't have anything very problematic. 1 copy of Titaniclad. You need to send this with Nadir in order to get Surge both for your Punishment and your Fleur de Lis. And for the Link monsters, play 1 copy of Link Rebo for the Drytrons. 1 copy of Anima, same thing, but if your opponent has a monster out the extra monster zone, then you can still with this. It doesn't happen too often, but sometimes your opponent just forgets that this card exists, so you can get a free plus out of it. 1 copy of Phoenix, 1 copy of Unicorn for the Nightmares, and 1 copy of Boral Sword. Try to go for a game even faster. You don't need it too much in this deck because you do have enough damage, but sometimes maybe your monsters are not the best, so you need to go into this with just 1 Trishula or maybe an Area Dare, and then you can win just like that. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Nekroz, a deck that pretty much hasn't died ever since it came out. It's a deck that people have been playing. It has pretty much everything back except Jin, which I doubt we'll ever get back, and hopefully we don't get it back because it's such a problematic card for the game. But still, the deck is a very fun deck. A lot of people like it. A lot of people innovate. There are so many different versions of it, and I think the deck, every time we get a ban list and every time everything else gets a hit, Drytron and Nekroz just continue being an engine and a deck that fits so well together that make them even more viable with every single hit that everything else receives. So I'm pretty sure that eventually we're going to see a format where this deck can actually be a very good rogue tier status and maybe even tier 1 again, who knows. So yeah, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.